it's Bishop Mark. Today's Luke chapter 12, verses 41 to 48. But as we said last time, this is actually a section that begins on 35 and ends at 48. And we saw the first half of this last time. It's about the things we should be afraid of, not doing God's will. And it gets more serious in this second half because Peter asks a question that focuses it even more. So let's start with Peter's question. Then Peter said, Lord, is this parable meant for us or for everyone? Okay, so Jesus is talking about the parables of the master, different types of parables, and he does yet another one soon in this. It was the master who was coming home late, and then the master who should have known been awake when he was going to be robbed. And Peter's confused. Now, is all this for everyone or just for us? Are you telling this for every single person or just for us, the apostles? Jesus answers. Basically, to end the mystery, his answer is, it's for everyone, but it's especially for you. Because when you're called to something big, the expectations are even greater. That's his answer. So we'll see how he does it. Okay, so Peter asks that question, and Jesus doesn't answer directly. He answers with more mystery kind of. Here we go. And the Lord replied, who then is the faithful and prudent steward whom the master will put in charge of his servants to distribute the food allowance at the proper time? So we're back to the master and the servants, and there's one who is the head. He's the steward, and who was given a special role. Remember, Peter just asked, is this for everyone? Or is this for just us? And so Jesus focuses on the leaders. The apostles are the leaders. And so the master's leader is the steward. Does that make sense? So he asks about the steward, whose charge it is to distribute. So what kind of steward would the master use? Blessed is that steward whom his master on arrival finds doing so. Truly I say to you, he will put him in charge of all his property. So he's talking about a good and faithful steward, the leader of his servants. If the master comes home and finds him, well, he'll give him even more responsibility because he will have done the will of the master. And if you apostles, he says essentially to Peter, if you do, you'll get even more responsibility. But, let's do the but. But, if that servant says to himself, my master's delayed in coming, and begins to beat the men servants and the maid servants to eat and drink and get drunk, then the servant's master will come at an unexpected day and an unknown hour and will punish him severely and assign him a place with the unfaithful. So if a steward who's in charge thinks, he's not coming home right now, so I'm going to be a terrible boss. I'm going to beat the people under me. That's the awful image, isn't it? But I'm just going to be a mean boss and going to just drink and get drunk and what if the master was to come home and he found him awful? Well, he would disgrace him. He would take him out and he would put him with the unfaithful. He wouldn't keep the job. What's he saying to Peter? You've given a great responsibility, like the steward in the story, to do your job. Do it even when I'm not watching. Do it when you're waiting for me. Don't lose focus. Don't turn bad, because if you turn bad, it's even worse. You're the boss. Does that make sense? Okay. continue. That servant who knew his master's will, but did not make preparations, nor act in accord with his will, shall be beaten severely. And the servant who was ignorant of his master's will, but acted in a way deserving of a severe beating, shall be beaten only lightly. We're having people beat up now. But it's just a story, and it's a parable. This guy comes home, and he has a steward who was the leader, and he was a terrible leader, and was doing awful things. Well, he'll be punished severely. Now, all the other people that were not the leaders, they're still going to be punished, but not as heavily as the steward, right? He was supposed to be the leader, and he messed up. The others messed up, but they're not the leader. So the punishment would be less. What's his answer to Peter from the beginning? Is this about us? Well, it's about everyone. But you, Peter, have a heavy responsibility. So if you do that responsibility, your reward will be great. But if you don't do it, your punishment will be greater because you're the leader. Does that make sense? Okay, let's finish. Much will be required of the person entrusted with much, and still more will be demanded of the person entrusted with more. So that's Jesus' answer. First of all, we need to be vigilant. We need to be awake. We need to be alert. When God calls us, we need to do our job. Be awake. But if God gives us leadership responsibility, then our responsibilities are greater. The rewards are greater, the punishments are greater. So Peter, I put you in charge of all the apostles. I expect an awful lot of you, is what he's saying. And don't fail me. Okay, this was a whole section of what we should be worried about. Remember that? And feels very worrisome. But if we just do our job, follow God, never lose focus, our reward will be great in heaven. Peace.